Hi guys, welcome back to Rock Bottom Airsoft. If this is your first time here, it's good to see you. And if you've been back watching my series of videos, I'm glad to see you again. If you are enjoying my series of videos, don't forget to subscribe. I'll be releasing a new video every Sunday on different subjects within the Airsoft world. And if you like this video, drop a like on it at the end. If not so much, or you think there's room for improvement, put some comments down the bottom, let me know what we can do to make these videos a bit more interesting, a bit better, what you think you prefer to see. So anyway, moving on with today's video, as I've been discussing and looking at, I put up a post on some of the social media to see what type of batteries people were using and what they preferred. And it was quite interesting when I got back. Quite a lot of people seem to be using the lithium-ion batteries these days. Which I hadn't previously tried, and there's still a surprising number of people still use the NiMH batteries as well, which I was always under the impression that the majority of users would be using lithium polymer or Lipo batteries. Obviously nothing wrong with the choice of battery you have, but it did give me the idea that today what we'll do is we'll have a look at the different batteries, the most common batteries in use at the moment in Airsoft, and we'll do a quick comparison of the features on them. And then I've got two replicas that we're going to put these batteries in today, just to see if there's a difference, noticeable difference in the sound of the replica, in the performance that it produces, just for a feel really. With regards to the lithium-ion battery that I've purchased, it's a Titan power battery. I've never used them before. This will be the first time I've powered one of my replicas with it. So I can't really give you a true indication on how long it lasts or the impression I have for it until I use it in the field. So as soon as I've used it a bit more extensively in the field, I'll give you a full review of that. But today we'll just have a look and see what the difference generally is between a NiMH battery, a lithium polymer battery and a lithium-ion battery, and see if we can see any difference in performance in the two replicas. I'm going to use two replicas because some of the comments I've seen have indicated that you know, the lithium-ion batteries function fine in a standard replica that hasn't been upgraded, that isn't using a high torque motor or anything like that, but doesn't work as well in an upgraded replica. So for that reason, the first replica we'll be using for testing will be the Spectre arms. You may remember I did an unboxing on this replica. This is absolutely standard as it came out the box. I haven't done anything at all to this replica as it is, so we'll run all the batteries through that one and see how she sounds. And then the other replica we'll be using is an AR based replica that's made out of various bits that I made. This replica is substantially upgraded. It has a MOSFET just like the Spectre, but it has a high torque motor, 12-to-1 gears, a stronger spring. Pretty much everything in it has been upgraded or adjusted in some way to give it a reasonable rate of fire. So we'll try all the batteries on that one as well. Now looking at the batteries that we have, the first battery that we have is a NiMH battery. This is a 1600 milliamp hour battery. It's an 8.4 volt battery, and as you can see it's quite a bulky battery. That's one of the things about a NiMH battery. They can be a little bit larger, a little bit heavier. Again, I would have ideally liked to have had a 9.6 volt NiMH to test, but unfortunately I don't use NiMH so much anymore. I predominantly use Lipo batteries up until now. But I mean, there's nothing wrong with these batteries. Some of the features of a NiMH battery is that it doesn't have a memory to speak of. People will say there is no memory in a NiMH battery. That's not completely accurate. They do suffer from voltage droop over time, but it's negligible, so you shouldn't notice any memory with these. They're quite simple to look after. It's just a case of charge it up and go. A trickle charge, any smart charger can normally handle a NiMH battery. They're very stable. There's not much risk of them catching fire. I mean, obviously you still don't want to short circuit them or anything, but as Airsoft batteries go, NiMH are very easy to look after. You just charge them up. You can leave them charged, you can leave them discharged. As I say, there's no memory, so they won't be damaged if you run them completely flat. They'll just keep on working. So they're a good workhorse of a battery. There's no real care required with them. The drawbacks to using an NiMH battery, well, as we've already said, they're quite a big battery. They're not very small, and they are quite weighty if you're trying to keep the weight on your replica down. Also, they don't produce a great deal of power compared to the other batteries that we're going to mention, as in the current that they put out and the voltage that's with that current. They don't produce a great deal of power. They'll produce enough power to run your replica by all means, there's no problem there, but compared to the other batteries we're going to look at, they don't do that. With regards to as they drain, if you're using a NiMH battery, as the voltage of the battery goes down as you deplete the battery, you'll notice that your performance of your replica will go down, because these batteries do suffer from voltage drop as the charge in the battery goes down. So the lower it gets to being empty, the less and less performance you're going to get. So you know that's one of the downsides to one of those. So that's pretty much it for NiMH really. With regard to how long they last, you know, before you'll need to buy a new one, they can vary. There's wild variations in NiMH. The research I've done indicates that they can last from anywhere from 180 charging cycles to 2,000 charge cycles. Now when I say charge cycle, what I mean by that is running the battery completely empty and then charging it back up to full. So you know, they're saying between 180 to 2,000 charge cycles, so they have got good longevity in them. So that's the NiMH battery. Simple, relatively affordable, not really a whole lot to go wrong with it, and it'll work. So that's the NiMH. Next up on the list, we come to the lithium polymer battery. Now, you probably, if you've been into Airsoft for a while, you'll know all about lithium polymer batteries. These are the preferred batteries that people that are into remote control vehicles would use, whether it be cars, planes, drones, that kind of thing. They'll use lithium polymer. The vast majority of mobile phones and the like will have lithium polymer in them. And the reason that lithium polymer is so popular is because of the amount of power that it can produce. A Lipo battery, for the size of it, can produce a substantial amount of current, which is handy for us on our replicas. It would normally mean that you can drive a heavier spring with a higher torque motor or a high-speed motor faster. It'll run your motor faster, you get increased rate of fire, increased trigger response. Now this particular Lipo battery is a 7.4 volt and it's 2000 milliamp hour. So as you can see, compared to the NiMH, it's actually a little bit smaller. Not much, but a tiny bit smaller, but it's got a huge amount more capacity at 2000 milliamp hour. And the voltage, that's where it gets a little bit confusing. A 7.4 volt Lipo would normally equate to about a 9.6 volt NiMH battery, because as I say, the Lipo is capable of putting more current out. Now, I'm not going to go into all the specs and stats of the C ratings of the battery, but generally the higher the C rating of the Lipo, the more current it can put out, the more power it will put out, and that's what you work on. This is a 20C Lipo. They do also do 11.1 volt Lipos, which again, they produce even more power, and obviously you can spin your motor even faster, which is the basis of what you're working on when you're looking at batteries. It'll spin the motor up faster. With regard to the milliamp hours, this one's 2000, this is 1600. A very basic rule of the milliamp hours is how long it's going to last. So the higher the number, the longer the battery should last, the more shots you should get out of your replica. With a higher number of milliamp hours, you'll get more shots basically before the battery is depleted. There's more to it than that, but as I say, we're just basically looking at the features and the differences of the batteries. So with the Lipo, again, you have no memory with a Lipo at all, so it won't suffer from what we call battery memory. So it basically means you can charge it up at any point. You can charge it when it's full. If you put it on the charger, it won't damage it. If you overcharge it, you know, if you don't set it to cut off on your charger, then that can be dangerous. But with regard to if you've only used half of the battery, you can charge it up. You don't have to run the battery empty. It won't remember where it was last charged up to, because of the chemistry in the battery. There is no power droop associated with a Lipo battery. So in other words, as the battery loses energy in it, as it becomes discharged, it won't start to lose voltage. So your performance will remain the same right up until the battery is flat. Now that brings us on to the next thing. that is the downside of lipos really. They do require a lot more care. You can't run one of these completely flat. If you run one of these batteries completely to discharge, then the battery is basically, well, it's no use anymore. You'll have damaged the battery cells and it shouldn't be used. Lipos are also far less stable than a NiMH battery. They do have a risk of what they call puffing up because of the way the chemical reaction works within the battery if they aren't cared for correctly. So in other words, you can't run these batteries completely empty. If you run them completely empty, you run the risk of them being damaged. You don't want to short these for certain, as with any battery, but with these particularly, they can set fire quite easily. You certainly don't want to damage them. You don't want to bash them about or give them too much of a shock, because that will certainly damage them. No overcharging them. You want to have a balanced charger to charge these. So you need a specialist charger. You can get these chargers, aren't very expensive, but if you want to get a reasonably decent battery charger, if you're going to be dealing with lipos, a decent battery charger will allow you to balance charge these. If they aren't balanced, again, it makes the lipo battery unstable. It's at risk of setting fire or causing damage to yourself or your replica. At the same time, you want to be able to put these in what we call a storage charge mode, so you don't store them fully charged. If you store them fully charged, that can lead to problems. That can lead to the lipo swelling up. You really don't want to do that. So they usually store them about 3.8 volts per cell, which any decent balanced charger will do for you. So again, the benefits do outweigh the negatives in many aspects with a lipo battery. As I say, the power output of these is fantastic, and they aren't very big or heavy. So as I say, as long as you care for them, then you should be absolutely fine. But obviously you do have to take a lot more care of these, and that is the main thing with a lipo battery. That's the downside. You have to take care of them, do a little bit of reading, make sure you balance charge them, make sure you storage charge them when you're finished for the day, or if they're going to be stored for any length of time, and take a bit of extra care with them when you're charging. Charge them in a flame-proof bag or in a charging box, something that if they get any damage of any kind, they aren't going to set fire to the surroundings. Again, you've got to keep an eye on them when they're charging, whereas with the NiMH, they're pretty stable. You don't have those issues. So that's the lipo. Now next we get on to the lithium-ion battery. This is the Titan Power lithium-ion battery. As you can see, it's quite a small battery compared to the NiMH. It's a lot smaller than that, and this is a 3000 milliamp hour battery. So this actually, in theory, holds more charge than the other two batteries combined, and it's slightly smaller. It isn't thin. The individual cells are about the same thickness as the NiMH cells, whereas the lipo is a flat cell, so it's a little bit thinner, but it is smaller than both overall. With regard to the voltage on this battery, this is a 7.4 volt battery. So really, lithium ion, what are we looking at with these? In many ways, you've got the advantages of NiMH and lipo together. I should have mentioned really that the life cycle of both of these compared to the NiMH is the same. Both of them should withstand about 300 to 500 charge cycles. So the lipo and the lithium ion are exactly the same in those circumstances. The lifespan of them should be about the same. 300 to 500 charge cycles before the battery starts to degrade. Now with a lithium ion battery, again, we have no memory in this, so you can charge it from flat, you can charge it from half full, you know, and it won't make any difference to the battery. Unlike the lithium polymer battery, the lipo battery, this battery can be run till it's absolutely flat. They're a far more stable battery, so there's no risk of this battery becoming damaged if you run it completely empty. You still have to balance charge these batteries. It's important to note that you do need a balanced charger, the same as you would for the lithium polymer. And as you may notice on these two batteries, they do have what we call the balance lead that enables us to balance charge the batteries. So they do have to be balanced charged. However, they are far more stable than the lithium polymer battery. So there is no risk of these batteries swelling up, setting on fire, any of the stories that you'll hear with regard to lithium polymer batteries. With regard to the actual storage of these batteries, you don't have to put these, strictly speaking, in storage mode. It's recommended to still store them approximately half full, but unlike a lithium polymer battery, it won't particularly degrade the battery. It isn't going to swell up and it's not going to set fire if you leave it fully charged, or if you allow it to drop below the 3.2 volts per cell, which is a problem on the lithium polymer batteries. With regard to the performance output of a lithium ion battery, what you tend to find is that lithium ion is very good at being used for long periods of time. Lithium polymer is good for outputting huge amounts of power, whereas lithium ion doesn't output quite as much power, but it can hold its charge for a very long time without degrading, and also it can keep working without discharging as quickly. I mean, as you can see, the 3000 milliamp hour for a smaller battery, and that will keep running for much longer than the Lipo battery will, so you get more shots basically. You can shoot more BBs with this per charge than you can with the Lipo or with the NiMH, while at the same time having the advantages of being slightly smaller than a NiMH, slightly smaller than the Lipo, but without any of the risks associated with a lithium polymer battery. So with that in mind, I think what we'll do is we'll have a look at how these perform in the different replicas and see if we notice any performance difference between them. Okay, so let's do that. I think what we'll start with is the standard replica first of all. Now we'll start with the NiMH battery and we'll see how that sounds. Now I'm going to have to use an adapter because unfortunately this is the only NiMH I can get my hands on, and it's got a mini Tamiya connection, whereas I don't use a mini Tamiya, I use Dean's connectors, as you're probably all aware. So I've got my little adapter here, I'll plug in this mini Tamiya, see how this performs. Okay, so this is on the NiMH battery, the 1600 milliamp hour 8.4 volt NiMH. That's semi, and that's full auto. Okay, so that's how it sounds with the NiMH. Now then, let's move over now to the lithium polymer battery. So this is a 7.4 volt, 2000 milliamp hour, 20C lithium polymer battery. Let's see how the replica sounds on this battery. Okay, so that's semi and full auto. I think myself, I'm hoping you can pick that up on camera, but it's certainly snappier on the lithium polymer battery, and it certainly seems like a slight increase in rate of fire. Now finally we'll move on to the 3000 milliamp hour 7.4 volt lithium ion battery, and we'll see how this sounds. It's quite interesting for me. I've never used one of these batteries before, so let's see how it sounds on that. So this is lithium ion, semi-automatic and fully automatic. Well, that sounded about on level with the lithium polymer. To be fair, I didn't really notice much of a difference between the lithium polymer and the lithium ion battery. So the Lipo and the Lion, the Titan, they sound very similar to me for rate of fire and for the snappiness of the trigger response. It seemed very good. The only one there, as I suspected, was the NiMH battery didn't perform as well. So that's on a standard replica with no upgrades, no modifications. So now we'll move on to my custom replica, one of the ones that I've built, and we'll see how this one gets on. So first of all, we'll try it with the 8.4 volt NiMH. I do have slight concerns that this 8.4 volt battery might not even be able to turn this replica over, but we'll find out. Put the adapter in. Now, you wouldn't run one of these normally with this level of modifications on a NiMH battery, but we'll try it. This is semi. Yeah, I'm not even going to try that on automatic. It can barely turn over the high torque motor, so we know that for a highly tuned replica, NiMH is not the option to go for. So we'll leave that one out of the equation for that. So let's move on to the polymer. This is the lithium polymer 7.4 volt battery again. Let's hope that this will turn over now. Now that's on semi. On full auto. So very snappy. As you saw there, the NiMH battery wasn't even capable of really turning the motor over, drawing the spring back and getting a shot off. But you can see instantly there the difference with the lithium polymer battery. Very snappy, lovely rate of fire. So now this is the bit I'm really interested in. Let's see how it performs with the lithium ion battery. See how we get on with that one. Okay, so this is lithium ion, 3000 milliamp hour on the modified replica. So semi and full auto. I'm going to have to try that again, guys, because to me I couldn't really notice much of a difference between the Lipo and the lithium ion. Let's try the Lipo one more time. So this is the Lipo battery again, semi, full. Let's go back to the lithium ion, see how that sounds. And one last comparison. Semi and full. Right. Well, for myself, I'd say that the difference between those two was negligible. Certainly the NiMH doesn't produce as much power as the other two, which I suspected. Maybe more successful with a 9.6 volt NiMH battery, but I suspect it would still struggle with a high torque motor and a high power spring and the 12-to-1 gears that I have in that. I think you would struggle with a NiMH battery to put out the output that you require. With regard to the 7.4 volt Lipo, absolutely fine as I suspected. These are what I normally use. However, I'm impressed with the lithium ion. 12-to-1 gears, high torque motor, strong spring, fully upgraded. I didn't notice really much of a difference between the lithium polymer or the lithium ion. So I think it really boiled down to what you were happier using. That's only a 7.4 volt lithium ion. They do 11.1 lithium ion batteries. They also do 11.1 lithium polymer batteries. It may be that there's a difference between those two. I don't have those batteries, so I don't know. But in conclusion, let me know what you think in the comments. Could you notice a difference between the performance with lithium polymer and the performance with lithium ion? If you could tell a difference, then let me know in the comments which you thought was performing better. Maybe let me know if you'll be moving over to lithium ion, or if you prefer lithium polymer, or indeed if you prefer NiMH, if you prefer the simplicity of NiMH and the less risk, just easier to use all round. Me, I'll probably keep going with my lithium polymers. I might try out an 11.1 lithium ion battery at a later date. But thanks again for watching. If you enjoyed the video, give us a thumbs up. And if you're enjoying my series of videos, don't forget to subscribe, and I'll be releasing a new one every Sunday.